we kind of spoiled this one off air, but I wanted to ask you guys about this player, and that is David Pastrnak. So David Pastrnak will be moved by the Boston Bruins this offseason. Cap or no cap?
I'm going to say no cap. There's a lot going on in Boston that does not look good at the moment, and it's looking full-blown rebuild. There's a possibility that Bergeron's going to retire. Marchand's going to miss a good chunk of the season from surgery, same as Charlie McAvoy. It's looking pretty gloomy there, not to mention the fact that Pastrnak is not happy with Sweeney after firing head coach Bruce Cassidy. Sounds like they had a good connection there, and he was not happy about that at all. I think all things point towards major rebuild. Poor Taylor Hall. Oh my God. Sucks to be him right now. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that are going to be knocking on that door to try to get a piece of David Pastrnak, not to, the Devils, to mention one, that's for sure. I really hope they're pushing to make a big move there. And a second overall pick is a pretty good way to start a rebuild.
I agree. Yep.
So yeah, I definitely see David Pastrnak moving, but knowing Boston and the Boston fan base and sports in general in Boston, I think there's going to be a friggin' riot if they do a full-blown rebuild. So that kind of makes me want to change my answer, but I'll stick with it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how I'm leaning, Case. So I'm going to say cap. I think there's zero chance that Pastrnak moves this offseason. Just because, like you said, Case, the Boston faithful will go nuts if they do a full rebuild. I don't think that's where they're headed right now, at least yet. You mentioned Marchand is going to miss a bunch of time. McAvoy is going to miss a bunch of time this upcoming season. I feel like the firing of Cassidy is Sweeney telling this group, like, okay, we just need a change. We feel like maybe he lost the room and we need a change to get guys going and motivated because they realize they're going to be missing two really key players down the stretch. They need guys to come in, step up, and just get them to the playoffs because I feel like management there still thinks that they're a contending team. So, and I think Pastrnak is included in that. That's how I feel. Like when I read the situation as an outsider, I feel like that's how they're thinking right now. They still think they're contenders. They just have to get to the playoffs and then see what happens. So I think there's zero chance they move Pastrnak. In fact, I think there might even be a better chance that David Krejci comes back than David Pastrnak moving.
I just don't see how they expect to make the playoffs without two of their top line players, no one down the middle, your best defenseman being out. It's like
I'm not saying they're right. Signs. I'm not saying they're right.
There's one more piece that sounds like he's on the move. I'm not going to say his name because I want to avoid saying his name when talking about trades with Boston because he's been talked about for the last 3 years being traded out of there.
Jake
I'll leave it there. Fuck. Jake DeBrusk is also it looks like he's on the way out. I don't know if we've said that 100 times, so it doesn't really have any merit, but like they have no one down the middle, and we've talked about that a lot. I mean, I like Eric Howla, but
he's not a 2C.
He's a 2C, and he's definitely not a 1C. They don't have one of those. If Bergeron
neither is
retires.
Charlie Coyle.
Yeah, so. I mean, trading for a 2 overall pick when you can get Logan Cooley is a pretty good way to start fixing that center depth pretty quickly. I don't know. Obviously, I'm reading into a lot of the Devils talk around it, but I think in general, Boston, it's looking pretty gloomy in that division to be trying to make the playoffs or in the Eastern Conference in general.
Listen, I totally agree. I just think, like, I'm not saying I agree with what they're doing, but I just feel like they think their team is still competitive and they're going to find out a way to get it done in that window. Like, they just signed Lindholm for 8 years.
Yep.
So what I'll concede on here is if they don't trade Pastrnak and they don't make the playoffs next year, then Sweeney's gone. And then wild card.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, they fired the wrong guy, it seems, anyways, right? Like, can we agree on that? Like, I don't think it was Bruce Cassidy's fault. I mean, he got that roster without a second line center or really any forward depth that is meaningful into a playoff spot in a really tough division with over 100 points. So
I have him as a top 5 coach in the entire league.
Yeah. And someone's going to pick him up too. And the thing is, like, he was told he was safe 2 weeks before he got fired. So that's just a rough play and a rough look for Bruins management there. But it is what it is, you know?
You know, and Boston is one of those markets. You guys kind of mentioned this, and there's 3 markets, and there could be more, that they should be rebuilding at this point, but there's just no appetite in the market and at
Chicago.
the top with ownership to rebuild, and that's Boston. That's San Jose, and that's Philadelphia.
Chicago too.
Chicago as well, yes. Now, it looks like they're going to rebuild no matter what.
I'll believe it when I see it.
When
I see it.
We'll see. But yeah, I just like Boston is in there for me, and they fired the wrong guy. I think Bruce Cassidy got the most out of this roster. I think that Don Sweeney has done a really poor job at constructing this roster, overpaying aging veterans, and they have a really thin pipeline. Obviously, we've talked about it many times. The 2015 draft with the 3 picks in a row sticks out like a sore thumb. And trading Pastrnak, could you imagine the haul that you would get in return, whether it's from a New Jersey or an LA or whatever? So I wanted to bring that up because I wanted to kind of give my 2 cents on the Bruins. Obviously, we posted something about them and the rebuild on our Instagram, but we'll have to wait and see.